The plane hummed softly as passengers settled into their seats. The overhead bins clicked shut, the seatbelt signs glowed, and the faint aroma of coffee drifted through the air. Row 17 wasn't first class, not even close. It was cramped, slightly stained, and smelled faintly of old leather. But for Daniel Hayes, a 34-year-old single dad, it was a small escape from his life of quiet struggles. He looked down at the photo on his phone, a little girl with bright eyes and missing front teeth. "Love you, Daddy. Come back soon," she had said at the airport that morning, her tiny arms squeezing him tight before he boarded. Her name was Sophie, 7 years old, the heartbeat that kept him going after her mother left years ago. He promised he'd be back by Sunday, with enough money to pay for her school trip. That's why he was on this flight, a short business trip that wasn't even his. He was filling in for a friend who couldn't afford to lose the opportunity. Daniel wasn't a businessman. He worked odd jobs, fixing air conditioners, painting old apartments, driving deliveries late into the night. But when his old friend offered him a chance to represent their small construction firm at a supplier meeting in Brisbane, he couldn't say no. It was just a few hours flight. Nothing special. In row 2, the world looked very different. A woman in her late 30s adjusted her silk scarf as she answered emails on her tablet. Amelia Sterling, CEO of Sterling Aerotech, one of the biggest aviation companies in Australia. Calm, powerful, and used to luxury. She didn't glance back toward the economy section. Why would she? Her life was polished, efficient, and far removed from anyone sitting in row 17. The plane took off smoothly, ascending into a calm blue sky. The flight attendants moved down the aisle, serving coffee and snacks. Daniel took a paper cup, smiling politely, and stared out the window. Clouds drifted past like white ghosts. He thought of Sophie's bedtime story voice, the way she'd ask, "Daddy, what if you could fly?" Halfway through the flight, turbulence began, mild at first, the kind that makes you tighten your grip on the armrest. The captain's calm voice came over the intercom. "Just a few bumps, folks, nothing to worry about." But minutes later, the bumps turned into violent jolts. Overhead bins rattled, lights flickered, and a drink cart crashed to the floor. A collective gasp filled the cabin. Someone screamed. Then the plane dipped sharply. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. He looked out the window, lightning flashed across a curtain of dark clouds. The seatbelt sign glowed red. A mother clutched her crying baby. A man shouted for calm, but his voice trembled. The captain's voice returned, now strained. "We're experiencing a severe systems failure. Please, brace for impact." The plane lurched violently to one side. Masks dropped from the ceiling. Chaos erupted, passengers grabbing for oxygen, prayers, cries, hands reaching for anything solid. Daniel didn't think, instinct took over. The older man beside him was frozen, staring blankly. Daniel yanked the mask over the man's face, then his own. His knuckles turned white around the armrest as the plane pitched downward. A deafening roar filled his ears. The cabin lights went dark. Gravity pulled everything down. Then came the impact. Metal shrieked. Seats tore loose. The world flipped upside down, a storm of smoke, screams, and shattering steel. Daniel felt something slam into his shoulder. Then everything went black. When he woke, it was silent except for the crackle of fire and the distant sound of rain. His head throbbed. The air was thick with smoke. The smell of jet fuel burned his nose. He was lying on his side in what used to be row 17. Half the fuselage was torn open, rain pouring through the gap. He tried to move, pain shot through his ribs. But he could move. "Hello," he croaked. No answer. He coughed, tasting blood. Then he heard it, a faint cry. He dragged himself toward the sound, pushing past twisted metal. A woman's voice, weak but alive. "Help, please." He followed it to what was once first class. Flames licked at the floor. A woman was pinned under a collapsed seat frame, her leg trapped, her white blouse stained crimson. Daniel recognized her face from the newspapers. Amelia Sterling, the CEO. Her eyes fluttered open as he knelt beside her. "You're from economy," she whispered, disbelief flickering in her tone even now. "Doesn't matter," he grunted, straining to lift the frame. It wouldn't budge. He scanned the wreckage, spotted a metal pole, and wedged it underneath. "You need to move when I lift." I can't." "Yes, you can," he said, voice steady but urgent. On 3. 1, 2, he heaved with everything he had. Pain exploded in his side. 3. She screamed as she pulled free, collapsing into his arms. He half carried, half dragged her toward the gap where the fuselage had split open. Rain poured down, extinguishing the smaller fires. He helped her to a patch of mud, then collapsed beside her, gasping for air. Are we the only ones?" she asked, voice trembling. Daniel scanned the wreckage, bodies, debris, and silence. "Not sure," he said quietly. "But we can't stay here." He tore off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She stared at him, this man covered in soot and blood, his clothes torn, his hands shaking but steady. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. Daniel looked at her, eyes hollow but kind. "Because someone has to." Hours passed in the jungle clearing. The rain eased to a drizzle. Daniel scavenged what he could, a first aid kit, a few water bottles, a flashlight. He splinted her leg with pieces of plastic and cloth. When the pain dulled, Amelia finally spoke. "You saved my life." He shrugged. "Just did what anyone would." She gave a faint, bitter laugh. "Trust me, not everyone would." They sat in silence, listening to the rain. Finally, she asked, "What's your name?" "Daniel Hayes. Do you have family?" He smiled faintly. "A daughter. Sophie. She's 7. Smartest kid I know. She loves drawing airplanes." Amelia's expression softened. "You're a good father." He looked away, his eyes dimming. "I try. But good doesn't pay bills." She noticed the wear on his hands, the calluses, the patched shoes. She had met hundreds of men in business, confident, polished, greedy. But none looked like him. None carried that quiet strength. The night grew colder. Daniel built a small fire using torn seat parts and a lighter he found in a wrecked bag. Amelia huddled close, her eyes flickering in the firelight. "Do you think they'll find us?" she asked. He stared at the dark sky. "If the black box didn't sink, maybe." She nodded, then hesitated. "You know, I own the company that made this plane." Daniel turned to her. "Sterling Aerotech." She nodded, guilt clouding her face. "We were testing new sensor systems. I was supposed to inspect some upgrades myself, but I delayed them. I thought the odds of failure were low." He didn't say anything. Tears welled in her eyes. "And now people are dead because of me." Daniel shook his head. "No. A storm did this. Don't carry what isn't yours." She looked at him, this man with nothing to his name, comforting her like she mattered. By morning, rescue helicopters buzzed overhead. The beam of light swept through the forest wreckage. Amelia tried to stand, wincing. Daniel waved a broken panel high in the air until one of the pilots spotted them. When the rescue team reached them, Amelia grabbed Daniel's hand. "You're coming with me." He laughed weakly. "Trust me, I'm not going anywhere." As they were airlifted out, Amelia never let go of his hand. A week later, the world knew their story. "Broke single dad saves billion-dollar CEO," the headlines read. News anchors called him a hero. Cameras followed him outside the hospital, though he avoided attention. Amelia visited him every day during recovery. She learned about Sophie, about the small apartment he rented, the late-night shifts, the quiet sacrifices. And every time she asked how she could repay him, he simply smiled and said, "Just get home safe." But Amelia wasn't someone who forgot. 2 months later, Daniel received a letter. No sender name, just a sleek envelope.